Welcome to our Tuesday live show. I'm Todd Sachs. I'm your host. And if you've never watched our show before, I'm a real estate broker. I'm located in Maryland. Connect with real estate brokers and agents all over the country. We've been podcasting now, I don't know, I guess coming on about 5 years. It's been a long time. Never thought that I would be a YouTuber, but here I am. And, you know, a lot of people watch our show because they're interested in what's going on with the housing market, because we follow it. We're boots on the ground. I manage agents and transactions. I do some production myself, not a whole lot. Usually when the referrals come in, I pass those off to our agents. But I try and do a handful of transactions a year just to keep myself familiar with what's going on and you know, with the negotiations, agent behavior, things like that. But today we're going to cover a lot of ground. We're going to talk about what's happening right now, what I'm seeing in the housing market directly myself, and also through other professionals and people that reach out to me, send me emails, comment on our channel. I have a very good pulse of what's happening in the housing market. And a lot of people, you know, when I started saying in 2022, in the beginning of the year, that the housing market was going to crash, everyone thought that, you know, I was crazy, that home prices only go up. You have people like Dave Ramsey, who's very respected in the industry. He helps a lot of people obtain financial freedom. But he's also in the real estate business. And even Dave Ramsey said that home prices never go down. And a couple of months ago, he made a statement that prices were adjusting based on panic sellers or something to the effect of sellers needing to get out. So we're going to take a look at both sides of the transaction today. Buyers are getting cold feet. I can tell you that right now. I haven't seen this type of, even through the 2008 crisis, which I was an agent and had a team back then with a regional brokerage way before I started Sachs Realty. Even through that period of time, I never observed the behavior of buyers like what we're seeing today, with the amount of first-time homeowners having remorse buying over the last several years. But really, more importantly, the way that buyers are really behaving. They're really, you have three types of buyers that are out there right now. You have educated home buyers, you have not educated home buyers, and then you have forced home buyers. And these are home buyers that have to buy. They're relocating for work or whatever reason. They need to buy. They need to get out of their current situation. And many of those buyers are very prepared, and they're willing to take the risk of buying today at today's home prices and risking the fact that if they need to sell in the next 5, 7, 10 years, they could be underwater from where they're even buying today, even though we're seeing a lot of corrections and price adjustments. The educated home buyers are home buyers like what we just had up on the screen here, where they're saying, you know what, home buyers unite and be wise. So educated home buyers that have been tracking the market, not just from headline news, but really that have, maybe they have peers that bought houses that have expressed remorse. They're watching it firsthand, or they're seeing what's happening, that home prices are just so expensive. And when they're comparing it to the amount that they make a year, and then with all of the coverage, if they're paying attention to insurance rates skyrocketing, property taxes skyrocketing, home maintenance and repair costs skyrocketing, these are really an educated cohort. The non-educated home buyers are home buyers that sort of have their head in the sand. They're not paying attention to what's going on. They're the most vulnerable. They're not really, they're listening to maybe a friend of theirs that's a real estate agent, or maybe even peers or their parents that are saying you're throwing your money away renting. And we're still seeing a lot of this cohort where they're paying for prices for houses that they wouldn't need to pay if they were educated. So the purpose of my podcast is not to tell you don't buy a house, but really to help you be wise, to help you be more educated. And that's why I wrote my course, my Todd Simple home buying course. And if you've watched my show before, you realize that that's a new product that I just released back in June. So it's brand new. We've helped a lot of students. And if you're buying a house, I recommend that you take that course. But I want to pull up, we'll start by really covering this Forbes article that just posted on October 13th. And the headline is, would-be homebuyers are getting cold feet and backing out of deals at record pace as some sellers have a hard time adjusting to new reality. And we're going to go over that too. And today, I'm also going to show you my MLS, and I'm going to pull up some properties that I've been tracking. And having buyers that are on the sidelines, that are in specific areas, I'm going to show you a list that I've established for a buyer, and we're going to dive into some of the details of these houses that are on the market so that you can see firsthand what is going on. So the types of sellers we have right now are, we have an arrogant cohort of sellers, and this cohort is, my house is worth this much money, my neighbor sold for that much money a year ago or even 8 months ago, and if we can't get that price, we won't sell. And that's fine. I mean, the difference between an existing home seller and a new home builder, which you can get new homes right now cheaper than existing homes, is that sometimes the seller doesn't have to sell. So my question is, why are you selling? So if you're in that cohort where you're saying this is the price, that's it, take it or leave it, you may want to consider just taking it off the market, which many have. And then really we have the hopeful seller. And that's the seller that, wants to put it on the market. They're realistic in a lot of ways. They know, hey, look, the ship may have sailed, and we need to be more realistic. A lot of this cohort purchased their house prior to 2019. So they have a lot of equity. If they really want to sell and they're motivated, they're willing to be realistic with a buyer today to help them get through the negotiation process. Certainly, we're going to talk about how to verify a bona fide buyer, because you could be entertaining somebody that's wasting your time. They may be unrealistic and not qualified. And we see a lot of deals that are falling through for many different reasons, which we'll cover as well today. But then we really have this other cohort of sellers that's we'll call desperate. And for a lot of reasons, they've already moved out of their house. They've moved on. Maybe they relocated. They bought something else. Maybe they purchased it in the last 3 or 4 years and they realized they made a mistake. They could be financially burdened because of that as well. And a lot of people are losing their jobs. I mean, we have seen unemployment rates rise. And right now, I mean, it's all over the news that we have a government shutdown and the potential to see a lot of job loss within the federal government. And here in Maryland, it's all across the country, but in Maryland, we have a big pool that could fall into that category because a lot of Maryland residents work for the federal government. They live in D.C., or they work in D.C., and D.C. straddles Maryland and Virginia. So before we get started here, I just want to cover some housekeeping. Again, I'm Todd Sachs. I'm a real estate broker. If you're here in Maryland or wanting to move to Maryland, reach out to us. We'd love to help you directly. And if you're anywhere in the country, I can probably help you too with pointing in the direction of a good agent. But we have a poll, and if we could just pull that poll up here. And the reason, and I haven't had a poll like this before, because we're doing a couple unique things here. One of the things that I'm working on right now, because I believe there will be so much distressed property that will be hitting the market in the next 12 to 18 months, I'm currently myself looking for a renovation project that I can take my viewers along from start to finish. So I'm in the process, I've said it over the last couple of weeks, of looking for a house to renovate, purchase and renovate, to show you how you can find a house, gain sweat equity, and have a nice place to live. So what I thought was, In other news, I'll finish that thought for a minute. I've been a contractor since 1989. That's how I got into this business. So I've been serving the housing market since 1989. Started out as a contractor, became a home builder, got my real estate license in 2005. And the reason that I got my license is because I didn't like dealing with real estate agents. And I've said this story before. I remember when I was in class to get my pre-licensing class out of the way, they went around the room, the instructor went around the room and said, like, hey, let's tell everybody why we're here getting a real estate license. And as they went through the room, people were saying, I just love people. I just want to help people. Some were honest and said, hey, I want to help myself buy a house, or I want to help a relative buy a house. So I thought it'd be a good idea to get my license. They got to me and they said, well, why are you here? And I said, well, I'm here because I'm a builder and a contractor and I don't like real estate agents. And I'm trying to eliminate them as much as possible. And everybody kind of looked at me like, oh, okay, there's that guy. But I got my license in 2005. I built a team in a regional brokerage, and then I started my own company, Sachs Realty, in 2017. And we've always had the mindset to not be a big broker, but to be a good broker and to hire agents that will stay current and do a good job for the client. I've always thought as a broker that my client is the buyer or seller, not the real estate agent. And a lot of real estate brokerages don't feel that way. They Encompass, their CEO, even said that himself, that his client is the real estate agent. And I think that's where we failed people miserably, because a business, regardless of using independent contractors, and that's as an agent, that's most of the brokerages, they're not W-2 employees. They are actually subcontractors. But a lot of these brokers believe that if you just get as many agents as possible, if they sell one house and can still pay for fees on a monthly basis or an annual basis, then we can make money on the fees and we can just get as many agents as we possibly can, and we'll cater to them. And that has failed, in my opinion, the public miserably. So just a little background on that. But anyway, getting back to this poll, I've never done this before where I said, you know what, I want to poll and find out who our viewers are, because I can tell in the comments. But I want to make sure that as we're moving into this next chapter where sales have been at all-time lows, it is going to loosen up. And I still believe prices are going to continue to fall. It's going to become more of a buyer's market. Sellers will still make money if they purchase pre-2019. And I think that we will get to a spot in our industry, in the housing market, where people will find better deals and get off the shelf and make their move and get their roots in place. And I also believe that we will see eventually, and I don't think it's going to happen tomorrow, but I do think that we'll see mortgage interest rates in the fives. I think that's a realistic number over the next couple of years. So I want to know, who's watching us? Who is watching me? What do you want to know? And so that we can serve you best. And that's why I started. I have a couple courses that I'm working on, but that's why I wrote my Todd Simple Home Buying course first, because I wanted it, and I instruct the whole thing. It's a very in-depth course, but I want buyers to not be so dependent on real estate agents. Even if you decide to use a real estate agent, that's fine. I'm not saying don't use a real estate agent, but I want you to know more, because your agent may not. And you're dealing with commissioned, incentivized salespeople that want you to buy a house or want you to sell a house and want you to drop your price and want you to move so that they can move transactions. And I'm no different, honestly, on the brokerage side of things. I'm different in the aspect of, I want to educate you, and I'm not pushing you just to get a check, but we still only get paid when somebody buys something. And so I think the buyers really command the show in most markets. Even though the seller holds the property, the buyer, if the buyer doesn't buy, nobody gets paid. We don't get paid here at the brokerage. Loan officers don't get paid. Home inspectors aren't hired. So that's why I wanted buyers to be the most experienced, and I wanted to focus on that first. I am working on a seller's course, hopefully to be out by this spring. But let's just kind of we'll go through a couple things here. I may take a caller or two. So if you're watching the live stream and you want to come on, you're a buyer or seller or just somebody that has a real estate question. I want to stay focused. So if you are a buyer or seller or someone that has a real question, and you're not afraid to come on the show, we'll bring you on. You can just sign on whenever you want, and we'll just stop whatever we're doing, and we'll bring you on. I want to let you know that if you like the channel, you can support us. $3 a month. You can cancel at any time. There's a join button. And also, if you haven't subscribed to our channel, that's a way that you can help us and support us for free. So if you've been watching us and you haven't yet subscribed, please do it now. Hit the subscribe button. You'll know when we upload content, which is about 4 times a week. All right, so let's go ahead and we'll dive in. I want to start out by I want to show you. We're going to look at my MLS. And by the way, I'm sorry, we didn't focus on that poll. Could we pull that up one more time? All right, so who's watching today? I want to address you specifically. Homebuyers, 53%. Welcome. Home sellers, 8%. I want to invest, 15%. And another reason, 24%. Maybe you can comment in the live chat and let us know why you're watching. Maybe you just like to hear me rant. Maybe you have nothing better to do. Love Todd's expertise. I appreciate that. All right, so let's take a look at my MLS. So what we're looking at here on the screen, this is the back end. When an agent loads up a listing in the MLS across the country, whoever your MLS is that's serving the realtor, that's what gets published to all the consumer-facing sites for the most part. There's this new delayed listing thing. We're not going to talk about that today, but there is a possibility that if you don't have an agent and you've been only looking at data on Zillow or Realtor.com or Homes.com, you may be missing a couple things that are available for sale. But what I want to talk to home buyers about today is days on the market is really something that commands the show. Because if you are in that educated cohort that I talked about, or you're getting educated, you need to know that the first week a house hits the market, you have the most exuberant buyer pool. And that's the time when a home seller can get the best price for their house. So what I like to do when I'm working with buyers, especially first-time buyers, is I like to say, look, let's start looking at inventory that has been sitting on the market for 30 days or more. Now, this is really becoming more and more inventory as as time progresses, because houses are sitting on the market. We're not seeing what we did 2 years ago, where it was on the market for hours. And I guess let's look at, I want to show you my criteria here that's set up for this particular search. Because I'm not looking at everything. So this is Baltimore County, Harford County, and Howard County. So this client works in an area where, and this is like an agent's nightmare when they're like, oh yeah, well I can live in 3 different counties. But as long as we're zooming in on certain parameters, it makes it more palatable to find something and not drive yourself nuts because you're zooming in on more specific things. So there's a whole list of cities here on the right-hand side that is they're not interested in. So we've eliminated that. Obviously, things that are active up to $750,000. Detached, which means it's a house sitting all by itself. It's not a townhome or a condo. It's detached. Single family, okay? And we're starting with that, boiling that down. So then what I did was I searched these from highest price to lowest price just to show you all today instead of zooming in at different counties and bouncing around. But this is live. This is real. These are real addresses, real houses on the market. So we're going to look at these together. So this particular house is listed at $750,000, top of the market. It's been on the market for 44 days. All right. And a couple things that we want to pay attention to. I pay attention to as I am I'm in the industry, is I want to see, would I be happy with my agent or Sachs Realty producing a listing like what we're looking at? Are we looking at the pictures that I want people to see, the ones that are looking on Zillow and Realtor.com? So you can be the judge of that, but I can look at photos and I can tell you that for $750,000, there isn't a whole lot of photos on this house. So that's the first thing I'm noticing. I'm also looking at this main photo here, which to me it's not that attractive. I mean, it's obviously the grass is browned out. I don't know what season I'm looking at. This is telling me it's not a current fall picture. This is telling me that this photo was taken in the middle of the drought in the summertime. So I would probably, if I were the listing agent, I would probably update that. But a couple of things that I'm automatically zooming in on when I'm looking at listings, and I want to tell you guys that not every state is a disclosure state. So if you live in a state like Texas, for instance, you don't have a lot of the functionality that we have in disclosure states. So when I'm saying not a disclosure state, I'm talking about the history. I'm not saying that sellers don't have to disclose problems, because they do, that they know that is, wrong with the house. I'm talking about disclosure state as far as price history. All right. And there are several states, I think there's maybe 13 states that are non-disclosure states. And you have to fish a little differently to find this information. But I do know in Texas, they have a relatively new MLS. I was talking with an agent, friend of mine, not that long ago, and she said, if you give me an address, there in the new MLS, the agent can see a lot of the historical information. So you can find data. You just may not be able to find it on your own on sites like Zillow or Realtor.com. But me as a shopper for my buyer, and what a buyer should be paying attention to, is what's going on with this property. It's listed for $750. It's gone down in price, the green arrow down, which I think Maryland is hovering right around 43% of the active inventory on the market has had at least one price reduction. That's important to know, especially if you're going out and looking at the house the first 2 or 3 days that it hits the market. But the first thing I want to do is I want to look at this property history button, because this is going to tell me a huge story about the seller and what they've been going through, whether they've changed agents, changed brokerages. And so looking at this real easy glance, they bought this house in October of 2024 for $700,000. They tried selling it they put it in coming soon in August of this year. It went active on September 1st for $825,000. Now, a lot of sellers that bought in the last several years in Maryland, I'm always thinking, when I'm representing a seller, we need to plan on 9 to 10% to get you out of the house. So what will that number be to clear what you purchased for, especially in this case where it was 2024? Now, you can't just automatically bump the house up in price to cover that 9 or 10%. And the reason I say that is because Maryland is expensive on transfer recordation fees. You're going to have real estate commissions. You're going to have any kind of repairs and closing costs. So you will have title fees. If you have a mortgage, they're going to collect money to pay off your mortgage, do various things. Some title companies try and jam sellers with, we're in a state where the buyer pays for the title work. A lot of states, the seller pays for the title work. So that may adjust. So in Maryland, I'm saying 9 or 10% is a cost to sell your house, because you have to fix things and, pay for fees. So when we look at that, They started at 825. They're now down to 750. All right. Now we'll go to the next one. So this particular property is in Howard County, also listed at 750. Again, we're going to dive in 47 days on the market, and we're going to check that history again. Tells the whole story, right? So this is taking me back to 1994 when it was on the market for $272,000. They tried to sell it in 94 for $249,000. Imagine those prices. They didn't sell it still, so maybe they built this house brand new. Then they tried to sell this house in 03, leading up to the 2008 crash. They sold it in 4 days for $449,000. They tried to sell it. The people that bought it in 2003 tried to sell it in 23. They put it on the market for $650,000. They didn't sell it. It expired. They had it on the market for 6 months. It went into a rental. They were like, you know what? I can't sell it. We'll try and rent it. $3,750. They bought it for $449,000. That's not a good deal on rent to, I always say 1%. So if I paid $450 plus closing costs, all that other stuff, and we're somewhere in the $500,000 range, you would want that house to be able to rent for 1% a month, like $5,000, or it's a loser from an investment standpoint for any real estate investors that or people that want to get into it. That's kind of like the 1% rule, everything included. What do you have to pay to fix it up, get it rent ready, get it licensed, buying it, closing costs, all that. If it's $500,000, if you can't get $5,000 a month for rent, it's a loser. You're wasting your time. You're going backwards because it's expensive. Landlording's expensive. People move out. You got to go in and spend $40,000, $50,000 repairing things, replacing things, getting it ready again. And you're constantly just in that grind of losing money. But so in 24, they canceled it. They said in October 24, you know what? It's not renting for $3,750. So what do? They put it on the market in August of this year for $800,000, dropped it to $775. Now they're back at $750. And I'm just going down the list, guys. I'm not picking and choosing. This is non-selected. It's only selected based on the criteria that I just told you about. So we're looking at this thing live together. All right, we'll look at this next one here. So back in 04, bring it forward, 2014, they still couldn't sell it, $449,900. So from 2004 to 2014. So this is an important point that I want to make, because in 2004, home prices were appreciating not at the rate that they were in 2020, 21, or 22, but leading up to 2006, the peak, home prices were appreciating pretty fast. So when they bought this house in 2004 for $420,000 and tried to sell it in 2013 after the crash, they couldn't sell it. They tried to sell it again in 2014, couldn't sell it. Now here they are in 2025 trying to sell it. And guess what? It went off the market. They put it on the market in June 16th. I'm guessing what happened is it wasn't ready to go on the market again. The agent couldn't change the date. They put it in coming soon for 6/4. It automatically went live. They pulled it off 6/16, 775, put it back on and 6/24. And then they've price reduced to 749. And it's back to active. It was under contract in August. And since it fell through, they have nothing. And now they're looking to, hey, let's try and rent this for $4,000 a month. So again, looking at if you had a $775,000 house and you're renting it for $4,000 a month, it's not worth $775. They paid $500,000 in 2014. Here we have a situation where this is unfinished inventory. It's been on the market for 241 days. Now, the question that I have is, when were these pictures updated? because these are currently active houses. 1019 and 1013 are the addresses. If we look at the pictures here, there's 4 photos. You have some elevations, some floor plans, and a house where the Tyvek is not completely covering the wood, and no updated photos or listings. 241 days this house has been on the market. $749,000. And then we can look at this, 749,606. That's a creative number. And so what we have here is they've been trying to sell this house since March of 2025. And as a result, we've seen a price increase every couple of weeks. The price has been going up. Now, let's dig into this a little bit. Other floor plans available. This is a builder. So when we're looking at the MLS and we see that prices are increasing, the first thing that it tells me is that it's a home builder, because they don't want to drop prices. They want to continue to raise prices. So they're using this as a courtesy listing. That's what it's called, a courtesy listing, to drive buyers to their development. Okay. But when we hear that home prices are rising, a lot of it, or active inventory prices are rising year over year, a lot of this is driven by new home inventory. And then we'll just look at a couple more here. But here we have one's been on the market for 88 days. Again, we're going to check out this history, see what's going on with that. So final close price in 2012. This is after the housing crash. So they started at $439 in 2011. They ended up at $541. They bought the house. It sold for $541 in 2000 It closed in 2012 for $375,000. It started out at $439,000. So when people are when I'm talking to people and I'm saying, look, we could be looking at another 2008 situation, what I'm talking about is home prices crashing. And that's what we're seeing. So when people say, well, it's not possible, they never do that, that was a once-in-a-lifetime crash, it was a different scenario then, no, we're still seeing it right now. I'm showing it to you, where prices are coming down from their peaks. So they bought it in $375. They turned around and sold it in 2023 for $541. Now, the first thing that I would think of is, why wasn't it $700,000 in 2023? Well, because houses started to crash in 2022. That's when home prices reached their peak pretty much nationwide. Fed started raising interest rates. You went from homes priced in a 2 and 3 handle to homes priced in a 7 and 8 handle. We hit 8%. And they were lucky, in my opinion, to sell this in 2023 for $549. Now, guys, why are they selling it in 2025? Now, with keeping this screen up here, I just want to say that if you're a buyer and you're not looking at this kind of information and this kind of data, these folks probably can't take less. Maybe they've even refinanced. They've got a lot of cost in it. So when you look at it, you go, well, I want to offer them $600,000. They may not be able to sell it for $600,000 if they bought it in 2023. They could have refinanced. They could have taken out a home equity line of credit. So there's a lot of due diligence that you need to do when you're a buyer to say, look, I don't want to pay today's prices, but I want to strategize and look at houses where looking at the history, there's data that tells me that they have equity in this house. Now, they do have a lot of equity probably at this price, but it's not selling for that price. They've been trying to sell it since July. We're in October. They did a price reduction in August. I'm hoping that we can find something that was purchased. We may just, let me just go back. Look at this. This was built in 2021. Let's take a look at this one. I want to see what's happening here. Okay, final close price. These people bought it in 2021 for $712,190. They tried it for 750. They dropped it to 739, guys. If they take $75,000, if it costs them 10% to sell this house, they're under what they paid. All right. Seeing a trend here. All right, this house was built in 1963. Let's check this one out. 735 they want. They bought it for $625 in 2008. So this is right at the peak of home prices crashing. But we hit the peak at 2006. By the time we got to 2008, it was like blood in the streets. 2009, same thing. 2010, 2011. We didn't really start seeing a rebound in most of the country till 2012, 2013. Some states, Maryland, we were way behind the eight ball on it because we were one of the slowest states to recover. And for those of you that live in Nevada, you know there were whole neighborhoods where streets were closed and vacant. But same thing here. They're not seeing a whole lot of appreciation, and they still can't. They're still having a hard time getting an offer on this house that they're willing to accept. Maybe they've had an offer. I was hoping that we could find something where these people have equity. This was built in 1976. Yep, so they're selling for the first time. Well, let's look at that because this is a good point. All right. So they probably built this house. They've probably been in this house. There's no historical information where this house has changed hands from the current seller. Now, they started out at 745. They're now at 725. When I'm looking at listings where the people have been in there forever, this is your best opportunity to get to get some of this equity. Now, let's take a look at these photos. All right, so it looks to me like they're still maybe not living in the house. Probably not. Unless they decided to take all their photos off the wall, which is a mistake in my opinion. But look at the kitchen. It's old. Countertops. Old. Looks like Formica. That's a lot of money for a dated kitchen, dated bathrooms. Formica countertops. Looks like maybe the windows were replaced. But again, diving into this data, this is what you should be doing as a buyer and a seller too. If you're a seller or a listing agent working for a seller, you should really be doing your homework to try and identify what these houses should be listed for. One more. I don't want to bore you. All right, this was 1985. Let's take a look at this one. It's been price drop, 724, 885. Let's look at the history on this. Okay, here's another good one. So they bought this house in 2016 for $434,900. They're trying to sell it for now 724, 885. So the question is, can a buyer negotiate some of this equity and get a deal on this house? Now, again, it's going to depend. And when we look at the photos, look what we got here. We have a vacant house. Staging. So guess what? These sellers more than likely have moved on. Right? So when we're looking at a house like this, now, I would tell you if I was trying to sell my house for $350,000 more than I paid for it, I would probably replace the carpet. Just a recommendation. Again, I mean, I don't know the sellers and, maybe they wouldn't like somebody telling them that, but I would try and make it as move-in ready as possible, because when a buyer's walking through a house, they are instantly they are either connecting with the house or not connecting with the house. And for a lot of buyers, they just want move-in ready. I would have to look and see would this house sell for $800,000 or $900,000 in the community? Is it a bargain at what they're asking for? Probably not, because it hasn't sold yet and it's been on the market for more than 30 days. So again, I think, I don't want to continue to beat this into the ground. But what I can tell you is 35 days has been on the market. What I can tell you is that there's three types of buyers. There's educated buyers, uneducated buyers, and then there's forced buyers. And even the forced buyers can be educated. So get yourself educated. Let's look at a poll. See if we okay. So we got 58%, 252 votes. There's a lot of buyers out there. A lot of people, other reasons for watching. Let's take some comments. And if you want to come on the show, do we have anybody? We have no courageous. What's that? All right. I'm going to buy in 3 to 5 years, just like learning what's going on. Let's play a clip. So I don't know this agent, but it's pretty funny, and I'm going to get to know her. I'm going to reach out to her. I'd love to have her on the channel, but let's take a listen.
I sit here and go,
right.
Can we turn it up a little bit?
Because the goal really is to keep the money in your pocket. It doesn't matter what the commission is, because
all right. So hang on a second. So let me just bring you up to speed. This is an agent that has a YouTube channel. I was watching this earlier today, and I said, man, I got to show this. Because what she does is her channel, I think this is the first time she's had sellers come on, and kudos to them for putting themselves out there and coming on her channel. It has like 335K views, which is an outlier for her. But what she did was she sent them a questionnaire for them to fill out. And it's a great thing to do. We have actually a checklist and a questionnaire that we like to get before we go on a listing appointment, so that we know as much as we possibly know about the house, and more specifically the house and anything else, so that we know what to look for when we go there. But she takes it one step further and asks questions like, what do you think your house is worth? I may or may not agree with that as a prerequisite, because sometimes I feel like agents will tell you anything. I don't believe that with her. I'm not accusing her of being that way, because from what I've heard from her, she sounds like a great agent. But a lot of agents are like, I don't have the experience. I don't know. Like, you tell me, what do you think your house is worth? And they'll say, and they'll be like, oh, yeah, I see that, whatever. Instead, an agent should be able to walk in the door with the information. And that's why I like my information sheets filled out, because it gives me a good idea. And when I'm looking at the property, I can tell you what your house is going to sell for. It doesn't matter what you think as a seller. I can tell you what it's going to sell for, right? Because of experience. And so that can be a cop-out if your seller don't think that this is great that she asked that question. I think it is okay with her. But there's other things, like she says in there, a cliche kind of question, and she says, well, what's more important, Mr. and Mrs. Seller? The commission that you pay an agent to get your house sold, or the money that you put in your pocket? And okay, that's like, that to me that's salesy. That's like, yeah, that reminds me of the old days, like Tom Hopkins and Zig Ziglar, and, let's do the Ben Franklin close with you. No, I think that people care about both. They care about the money in their pocket and how much they're paying in commission. They want to know it all. They care about it all. So you can't discredit it or think that somebody's educated or uneducated enough to think that they're not trying to just be tricked into some question. Well, it doesn't matter what you pay in commission. It only matters what you put in the pocket. No, because if I can get more for my house and pay you less, guess what? I put even more money in my pocket. So let's talk about that. And anyway, the question comes around, if you're going to ask me that question, what are you going to do for me as an agent? What are you doing with the money that I pay you? Well, how do you spend it in advertising and promotions? How do you drive people to my front door? How many states are you marketing to? Because there are people that relocate and they don't know the zip code or the county or the city where I'm located. And I give you a perfect example. In Maryland, we have something called Phoenix, Maryland, and Jacksonville, Maryland. Who the hell knows that? People say Jacksonville, there's a Jacksonville, Maryland. I don't even think a lot of real estate agents know that. So if somebody's just putting it in Jacksonville, Maryland, but they're not marketing it, saying that it's really covering this area. If you're looking in Towson, you may be interested in Jacksonville. If you're looking in Cockeysville, you may be looking in Jacksonville. If you're looking at Timonium, you may want Jacksonville. If you're looking in Falston, you may want Jacksonville. How many markets are you just putting it on Zillow in Jacksonville? And if people aren't looking specifically for that and it doesn't pop up, so what are you doing for me as a seller? So, but anyway, I'm not, again, I know it sounds like I'm cutting on her. I'm not. I'm just saying I don't like that question, but let's listen a little bit of this because it's really funny.
Negotiating better, then you're going to have more money at the end of the day. So that is a trick question, I believe. And now,
the trick question: what's more important, commission or sales price? Money in your pocket. There we go. Now we'll go on.
Always ask this as well. Some sellers give me this information before I go into my listing presentations, and some do not. And that is, what do you think your house is worth? Now, a lot of people won't give that to me out of the gate because they think that it's cheating. Like, I'm going to hear what they say, and then I'm going to adjust my numbers for that. And what it really does is, by hearing that number, it allows me to position the conversation better. Because if, the sellers are thinking they're getting, $1 million, and I'm thinking they're only getting 500, then it's a better way for me to kind of lead into the conversation. So it's
a better way for me to say, not worth it. I'm not coming by. You think we're $500,000 away, but yeah.
What I use it for. So tell me, what price do you think you can get for your house?
I'm not sure, but I had a couple of realtors calling me a year and a half, a year ago. I said I didn't know that we were interested in selling, and he talked to me about the house and all the things that we've done for this house. We did to enjoy and live in, right? That's why we made all
great
those changes.
Pictures.
And he guessed it was 800,000, but that was a year or more ago.
Do you feel like the market's changed in your area?
I could give you an estimate somewhere between 8 and 9, but that would be, I would think, where I would list it. Okay. You only get what people will pay for it. So
that's true. What price do you think it should be listed for?
I would say 850 to 9.
859. What price do you think it'll sell for?
Hopefully 850.
What is the number you will not take less than when you go to sell?
I don't know that I know enough to be able to answer that question, because it is what people are willing to pay.
It's a popular neighborhood, correct?
It has been in high demand for decades.
Okay. And this is great. This is the next, what happens next is priceless, in my opinion. But you have two sellers that are completely disconnected from each other in this scenario, where he's obviously, sounds like he's driving the bus, and the agent's asking very good questions. She's very articulate. She obviously has a lot of experience.
Last several houses that have sold were sold after a bidding war broke out between potential buyers. Mm-hmm. And I told Carolyn, that's leaving money on the table. You need to ask for, if they don't come and ask for you to reduce the price, you're not asking enough.
Say that again. If they don't come,
if they don't come to you and say, I have an offer that's below what you're asking, then you haven't asked enough, is my opinion. You should ask more than anybody's willing to pay.
What do you all think about that? What do you think about that? Okay, so what did I just show you? People can't sell their house because it's overpriced, and they're dropping the number, and it's still doing absolutely nothing.
Bitter.
All right. I love this, and my regular viewers are going to love this conversation. How long have you guys been watching me?
I have not watched that single episode.
This is going to be awesome.
I have watched a lot.
You've watched a lot?
And that I find to be a lot is true with that. And the people that reach out to me, it's always in most cases, the wife that reaches out. And, I have, in looking at houses, the experience is the husband is the price conscious one. The wife is actually, in most cases, in my dealings, seems to be more realistic. But I always get the wives that are reaching out. They're like, yeah, well, my husband this or that, or we're not on the same page, and he wants this, and I want that, and and I'm like, well, I can't. I am not a marriage counselor. I can't. You need to get on the same page, and that's why my worksheet helps people to identify, put stuff down on paper, because a lot of times when you're going through the emotions, and what she asked was, what's the minimum that you'll take for your house? Like, at what point will you say, shut this down? I'm not willing to go beneath this price, and let's work from there. Because in this market, you don't want to be playing games, and the days on market is crushing you. And the price reductions, taking active, inactive, back to active from contracts that are falling through, all this historical data, if you're in a state where you could see this is all working against the seller. That's the last thing in the world you want. So you need to get on board day one, on the same page, and have a great agent if you're going to use one, and work through this. But anyway, let's keep going because it gets better.
Over here laughing.
Because you know what I'm going to say.
Yeah, I do know what you're going to
Okay.
say.
So a house is worth, like you just said, what a buyer is willing to pay for it. And the biggest mistake you can make is overpricing your home. And the reason why is because when you price it too high, the buyers who are looking up to the realistic number will not even see the house. So let's pretend, and I don't know what your house is worth. Okay. Like,
And he doesn't go on Zillow. So he doesn't know they go 25, 50, 75.
yeah.
I understand the theory. It's like eBay or anything else. You put in limits, and if you're on the outside of limits, you don't get looked at.
Right. Exactly. So what we're going to do is we're going to kind of go through this. I'm going to show you the pictures. I'm going to start
It's
with
like
how I
eBay. Selling your house is like eBay.
to do a normal, view to see what a house is worth. Okay, so let's start with this. That's your house, right?
That's it.
So this is your house. Now look at what that Zestimate says.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, what do you think of
That's
that
right.
number? What do you think of that number?
That would surprise me. That
Yeah.
would put us at the low end of the neighborhood.
There are houses in the neighborhood that may sell for that, but this house,
Not mine.
is moving.
Not mine.
Ready.
Not my house.
and there
I'm
is
not
really-
selling for that price. And you know what? In all fairness, I mean, I have seen where Zillow is low, the seller lists the house, and Zillow magically overnight hits that number. It's like, okay, well, so you really think that it's worth what we just listed it for? You went from 500,000 to 850, or maybe they'd be at 813 or whatever. So you can't always go by Zillow. You have to go by comparable sales in the neighborhood in the last 6 months at the most, because we're in a different market than we were 6 months ago. So if you're a seller, the best advice I could tell you is make sure your house is in picture perfect condition, you're getting professional photos, and that you're pricing it at the low end, so that if there is a market for your house, that there are people out there, you will end up getting more for your house, because you will get a bidding war even in a buyer's market. But buyers are becoming more and more educated. So you can't play the follow the arrow down game, because once the buyers see that there's desperation, that you've drugged this thing down through price reduction, that agent, it may have been the agent's fault, that because to me, it would be the agent's fault, because I don't want to take an overpriced listing. It does me no good to have a house that has a sign in it that never sells. But the other thing is showing you that the tail's wagging the dog. Yeah, you're the seller, you have the product, you have the money, but it's the professional agent that, what do we do? Why are we here? We're here so that we could say, if you want to sell your house, number one, what's your motivation? Are you willing, what's the best price in a market that we have right now? Me showing you your real true comps in the same subdivision, in the same square footage, in the same type of house style, all of these different things. What if you're unreasonable, unrealistic, let's just save a whole lot of time. Let me do you a favor so that you don't destroy your listing and destroy yourself out in the World Wide Web. Haven't heard that word in a while. Or that World Wide Web. Remember when we used to say www, the World Wide Web? Yeah. So anyway, let's take some comments and questions. But I think it's what we got a caller. Woo, we got somebody. All right, let's take them. What's happening? How are you?
Hey, not too bad. How you doing?
What's
Love
your name?
show. My name's Jim Yule.
Jim. Very nice to meet you. Where are you calling from?
Well, I'm calling from Lewisburg, North Carolina, just outside of Raleigh.
All right. Nice.
Yeah,
So
I
what
was a
you got?
builder here. I was a licensed builder in North Carolina in the
All right.
90s, but I'm from New York. I lived through the 1974 recession. Well, my dad is a builder and learned a lot from that. You know, we got our heads handed to us back then. Spent 15 years working out of the debt that it caused. And, you know, and I just here to let you know a little bit what I believe about the market timing. I
Tell
think
us.
that's worked
From
for
a
me.
fellow builder, tell us.
Well, I, let's put it this way. My father-in-law passed away in, was it 2019, 2020 in Florida. So we went down to Florida, purchased the home, and we ended up, my mother-in-law passed away 4 years later. We took care of her. And when it come time, was about a year and a half ago to sell the home, I seen that it was heading south. The houses on each side of us sold for about $200 a square foot. I knew that wasn't going to happen. Our house would have sold for about $540 if it had sold for 200 a square foot. So it was my wife's house. My wife, thank God she, you know, was go along with me fine. I said, look, we're going to put it on the market. And I said, when we put it on the market, if it doesn't sell in the first 10 days, we're going to drop it $10,000. And then in 10 days, we'll drop it another 10 and until it sells. Well, it ended up selling in 10 days. We had to wait, you know, about a month and a half for the closing and stuff, but we're just lucky to get out with our shirts on.
What do you think you would be selling it today for?
You know, I don't know because it was up in the Crystal River area and, you know, it's probably less, but down south side of Tampa and stuff like that is pretty devastated. I mean, the thing was, I just didn't want to hold it because the insurances were going through the roof and the taxes were going through the roof. And if another hurricane come through, you know, who knows what would have happened, you know, even because now maybe you can answer this better, but I'm seeing from some of the podcasts that if a hurricane comes through and say it hits in the Miami area and does billions of dollars worth of damage, it could be assessed through the homeowners throughout the state of Florida. And
I know the more the worst part of the story is to collect from FEMA is if the house is even, and I don't know the exact numbers, but I did know, I was talking with somebody about it, but if it doesn't, they give you a certain percentage of your tax assessed value. And if it's going to cost more than 50% of that to get the house back in working order, you have to raise the house. You have to tear it down and make it, I think, 15 feet above, ground level. You have to rebuild the house completely. So I know a lot of people are just screwed that were devastated by the hurricane. A lot of waterfront property.
Yeah, well, I just think that, you know, if it hits down in that Punta Gorda area and stuff like that, I mean, they're building in swamps down there. I mean, I don't, you know, in other places, you would never get a building permit. They would never get a subdivision permit for that stuff.
So let me ask you a couple questions about your building experience. Were you a scattered lot builder, or did you do subdivisions? What did you do mostly?
When I was building in New York, because I'm originally from New York, we were doing some houses, but commercial and housing because we were from upstate. I came to Raleigh and set for my license test in 1990. And I got my residential license and then I got my commercial license. I never built anything commercial here. I did a subdivision in Raleigh, a small subdivision, about 15, 18 lots.
Well, that's not small. I mean, that's a major, right? A major subdivision. What do they consider in North Carolina? In Maryland, 3 lots or more is a major.
Yeah,
So
well,
that takes more. It's more infrastructure, more permitting process, more time to get your permits.
yeah, I'm just talking. I'm not like a master plan community. They had, they had communities come in that, had their own school districts and stuff like that. And I'm, within 10 miles of what I was building. And I figured it was time to get out of town, and
So in your 15 home subdivision, was that something? Were you able to panhandle? Did you have to curb and gutter? I mean, what type? What were you
No, we
required
just-
to do?
no, they actually let us put it in with gravel roads, but we ended up paving them.
Paving,
But there was no,
but no curb and gutter.
no curb gutter. We didn't. There was no water sewer. It was all well and septic. But I got out just around 99 or so,
Okay.
and what happened was you'd either have to start another subdivision, because if you went into the subdivisions here, and this is what bankrupts the small builders. If you try to buy lots in a subdivision, they were telling me I had to take down 2 lots at 70,000 a lot. And when those 2 houses were done, my contract was I had to start 2 more houses. I had to take down 2 more lots, start 2 more houses.
From the developer. So you didn't develop it; you were buying it from the developer.
No, that's why I did my own subdivision. I couldn't even
Oh,
buy
okay.
a lot.
Oh, right. Gotcha.
Yeah, we couldn't even buy a lot. But then when my subdivision was basically done, I decided not to do another one because they were
Risk it.
lending 120, 130% of the value of the house because
Yeah.
people had credit card debt so high. I'm like, you know what? This isn't going to continue to go on just like, we're seeing right now.
What do you think's going to happen?
I think there's going to be a reset on the price of on housing totally. I think that, but it's hard to say, but you see gold going through the roof, you don't have a budget. And you got to look at those big things because they're the things that really seem to drive it. But I don't see how people can afford to buy more than $140,000, $200,000 house. How are these kids, once the move up buyers are done, where does the starter people come in? And there's no subdivisions for them because the builders have to build a big house to make money.
Right. Yeah, because there's so much infrastructure costs, and if they don't build a big McMansion, they
Right.
can't make any money. I mean, they're millions of dollars before they stick a shovel in the ground in soft costs, engineering, architectural, groundwork, stormwater management, putting in curb and gutter systems before they stick a shovel in to dig a foundation. And, the question is, what is everybody going to do with these McMansions? Are we one day going to bulldoze the McMansions? Because the millennials and Gen Z, and when you're looking at the Gen Xers and the baby boomers who are going to be retiring and downsizing, who's going to step into those houses? Who's going to take a house where you have to spend $2,000 a month to heat it, or spend $8,000 a year on insurance to live in 3 rooms? I mean, literally. I mean, how many rooms? It's crazy because it's amazing what people will spend to get themselves in debt to buy a car. It's all status. They need a $100,000 car, right? It's all status to drive it 7 minutes or 25 minutes to work and park it in a parking lot for 8 hours. Or if you're working from home, to have it sitting in your driveway or your garage, it depreciates instantly. It's crazy. But now take up until, and this is, I have not been one for remote workforce. As an employer, I think it's bad, right? And people, they all the time, they're like, Todd, you're not thinking right, and you're not an employer.
Yeah.
If you're an employer, you're thinking that this is not a good idea because you're watching your employee go to Target at 2:00 in the afternoon, and people say, "Well, I don't do that." Yes, you do, and yes, you will. And it will be a way that you're going to lose your job because when you're not connecting with the people that you need to connect with at the office every single day, and they're wondering what you're doing, it won't be long before when it hits the fan that you're going to say, see you later. And I think we've got a big issue with that Now, the upside of that is that people have been going back into work, at least on a hybrid model. Okay. But what about the houses that people are living in that they're going to work, they're spending all this money, they can't afford furniture in the house, all of the costs and the expenses, the house is deteriorating and falling down around you. If it's not right now, wait 5 years. You're a builder. Houses fall apart. It's a depreciating asset. It falls apart. If you don't keep it up and continue to spend money on it, it goes bad. And then what happens? You're going to go to sell it. We're not going to be in the 1 in a lifetime or 15 lifetime price escalation periods where we just experience it. And the buyers are going to say, we want all this stuff fixed, or we're not going to give you the money. But what are we going to do with all this big housing inventory? We either turn it into multifamily housing and we really upset the neighbors because they're still living there and they can afford to be there. And now all of a sudden you got a house next door to you that's 4,700 square feet and it becomes 4 apartments.
But they did do this one other time in history. In the 1920s, the big antebellum houses in places like Kingston, New York and stuff like that. And you didn't see them again until the 1990s.
Yeah, after World War II, there was just basic housing.
GI housing, yeah, because they come out of the war and they got the GI housing bill. And it was
just Levittown up there, right?
Yeah. So, and that's what I see. I see similarities more to the 1920s, 29, than I do to 2008, because 2008 they continued to build the big McMansions right out of that. And I don't see that happening coming in the future because, like I said, the first-time home buyer, uses equity to buy the second home, uses equity to buy the third home. But then, over the years, the interest rates, take 2 steps down, 1 step up, 2 steps down, but it goes down the ladder that way. And they use the equity to buy bigger homes because they're going to finance their future. They're using their home as a casino instead of a home.
Yep. And one day it's not going to work anymore. And I think we're at that point. I was going to ask you a question. I forgot what it was. It sounds like you mentioned gold. So,
Yeah.
I mean, everybody. I know Peter Schiff, and I've been to his house in Puerto Rico. I've been to his house in Connecticut. We've got some great interviews with him. He's a great guy. Love Peter Schiff. He's in his glory right now because he's been telling everybody that gold prices are going to go up, and they're like at 4,200 or something. It's a 41 something and some change. But so have the stocks, the mining stocks, which he loves too. And everybody gave him a hard time. They're like, yeah, you're pushing gold. You've been wrong for 25 years. He hasn't. Peter Schiff's probably one of the brightest minds that I know personally. But he was just on Fox the other day. And I don't watch Fox. I don't like any of the news, but I saw it on his channel. I do watch his videos from time to time. And he says next year we're going to have a big sovereign debt crisis here in the U.S. Now, I don't want to go down the doom and gloom path of that. We've talked about that enough, but that is looming in the background. We can't be ignorant to the fact that we wouldn't see gold prices hitting where they are, even silver prices. And this is not driven by consumers. Retail buyers, they're not buying physical gold. You know who's buying physical gold are central banks.
Banks, yeah.
That's what's driving the gold price. So what do they know, right? There's going to be some kind of a shift, and that is probably out there looming, but you're going to take that on top of the already unaffordable housing crisis that we have. Everybody needs a place to live. People can't afford the rents. Rents are $2,400, $2,600 for a single bedroom apartment, for crying out loud. I have a buyer. I'm like, what do you pay in rent? She's like $2,400. And I'm like, really? And this is in Maryland. I'm like, yeah, well, but that's not all I pay. That's just the rent. Then there's the trash fee. Then there's the insect or the spraying fee. There's the this fee and the that fee and the sunshine fee. And if you want to come in for coffee fee, it's like another $120, $130 a month on top of the rent. So now you're $2,550 for a 1-bedroom apartment. what is up with that? So you look at that. I have friends of mine that are they're operators in the multifamily housing. They're trying to sell. They thought the sky would never fall. They're having earnings calls. Their investors are saying, no more, no more, no more. They want to buy down the interest rate because they're getting clobbered. And now they're trying to sell some of their assets, some of their doors. And these are operators with tens of thousands of doors. And so, we've overbuilt that, the multifamily housing market. And now, I mean, I was in Florida and about a month ago, and I was driving on the West Coast near the Panhandle, and I spent a week there, and I was checking out construction sites and the building, the developing that was going on there. Of course, 14, 15, $20 million houses on the waterway. And, but I saw a lot of projects that were just stopped. Nothing was going on. I'm in construction. I mean, I'm curious. I'm going up, I'm talking, I speak a little Spanish. I could talk to people. I was, whoever I could find to talk to, I was communicating with them saying, what is going on? What's happening here? Number one thing they said was, there's no labor force. They're gone. And the other thing that was kind of like, reading between the lines was, you know what, we can't afford, the condos aren't selling, so we're at a halt, and we can't afford to continue to take drawdowns, on our completions, because we're not offsetting. The banks are nervous, right? They're like, they don't want to continue to write if the sales aren't there. You got to have a certain amount of sales to continue the project. Yeah, but it's like everything's coming together at this like boiling point.
Yeah, but wait till you see the bankruptcies of all these guys that are in the contracts on that stuff, because they're usually 45 days behind getting paid, but they got to keep going or they'll be in breach of contract. They're going to go, there's going to be, I mean, but that happened, about 20 years ago in Florida too.
You could buy a 1-bed or 2-bedroom condominium. I'm probably butchering this. I think it's Millennium outside of Orlando. I remember I was there and I had a friend of mine that was buying up places in like Doc Phillips and Millennium. I think it's called Millennium, is near a mall. And they were buying these condos, 2-bedroom condos for $35,000.
Yeah. Yep.
Nobody living in them. I'm like, that seems too risky for me. Now, hindsight, I should have bought all of them. I should have bought the building.
Yeah, you're not kidding.
I would have never guessed.
I sold my multifamily, and I think it was 2019, and we're at the closing in the bank, and actually before the closing, my banker, I'm talking to my banker. I said, "Are they going to make it?" And they were using the same bank as I was, and the buyer, and the buyer wanted to put it off for a few more days, or like until his wife could get there to sign or something, and the bank told him. They said, you either sign it by the end of the month, which was in like 3 days. You either buy this thing in 3 days or we're going to pull the loan. And I'm like, oh, this is horrible, because COVID was out there. Well, 2 weeks later, thank God he closed on it, because 2 weeks later, they put the moratorium on paying the rents.
Yeah.
I mean, you tell me the good Lord wasn't looking out for me. I'm telling you. Telling you.
Do you have rentals now?
I have one commercial building in New York. I have a commercial 8,000 square foot commercial building in upstate New York on the New York State Thruway, and I got a 20-year lease on it.
Single tenant.
Yeah, single tenant.
Yeah. You talk about I have gotten rid of all, and some of the people in the poll, they want to invest in real estate. If you are looking to buy rentals, this ship sailed. Residential rentals, the ship has sailed for an indefinite period of time. And there are people out there that are selling courses and doing things. And 14% of our poll, 382 votes, want to invest in real estate. Flips are almost impossible. I've been trying to buy one myself so that I can do a renovation and show my audience. I'm either going to do, and I'm going to get back into building. So I'm either going to, I started looking at lots recently in the last week. I'm like, I can't find anything to buy that I'm willing to gamble on even to take my viewers through. I mean, I'd love to, just have a YouTube channel about this is Mr. and Mrs. Buyer. This is how you do it. Don't be afraid of a distressed property. You could do some elbow work and gain some equity. But I've decided that I've opened the door up now that I'm looking at lots too. But I'll be honest with you, it's crazy. Like the money they want for lots, and they are raw land. There's no building envelope. And for those of you listening, you can't just build a house wherever you want on a lot, or at least in Maryland and maybe in other states. But you have to have an engineer. They establish a building lot. If there's a septic field or a septic reserve area, or you're drilling a well. These properties they want hundreds of thousands of dollars for. They have no water and no perk for septic. They're all rural, and if you're in the city, or in where you have city water or city sewer, then you want to check and make sure that you have hookups and that there's no moratoriums on the schools, because if you buy a lot and there's a moratorium, they won't give you a water and sewer hookup if it's not there. But anyway, so I'm looking at all these things, but I'm gonna go through this process, but it's risky. But anyway, you were talking about rentals, so I've been selling off my rentals. I wasn't a very good landlord. I never raised my rents. I mean, the tenants loved it, but if looking at it, it's like you have a perfect tenant, why raise the rent? I mean, look, you don't want an expensive, having it vacant and stuff like that. So I was always good about doing that. But I sold I had one in Baltimore. I had 8 units in Baltimore, and in Baltimore City, where near the Amazon plant. When I bought it, GM had gone out of business, and I bought these properties for very cheap. And next door was projects. But anyway, I sold it in 21. I'm like, man, I better get the heck out of this thing, because people were paying crazy money for rentals, and you were getting, that 1% rule was fading, and people were dropping down to 0.4% or 0.3%, for rent rolls, because they were gaining on that appreciation, hoping for that continual appreciation, which I knew was going to fall. It wasn't going to continue. But anyway, I remember I put it out. You talk about New York. So I had a lot of people come down from New York to look at these 8 units. And I remember one day I was there, and the agent called me up. He's like, yeah, these buyers, they buy as much as they can. They're they pay top dollar. They're really liking this, whatever. So I'm down there. I'm showing a property myself because I know about it and I know the tenants, and I wanted to be, present for them, because it's disturbing, for tenants when you have investors coming through, who's going to be the next landlord, yada, yada. And about 15 minutes before the people show up, I'm seeing a helicopter circling. I'm like, oh, it's a police helicopter. This is right over top of my houses, right? So I'm like, this is crazy. And so the people pull up, helicopters still going around. Now I have news helicopters, and they get out of the car, and they come over and they go, oh my gosh, do you know what's going on right up the street? I'm like, no. They're like, there's 25 people laying down on the street, and they're all handcuffed, and there's SWAT teams and cops everywhere. And I'm like, all I said was, welcome to Baltimore. I'm like, what else could I say? I'm like, oh, needless to say, they didn't buy it. They went back to New York empty-handed, but it was, but the next buyer bought it, and, but then they sold it a year later. They had all these great plans. They're like, yeah, I'm going to make this, I'm going to bring in a traveling nurse and Airbnb, and I'm going to, out of the 8 units, I'm going to turn half of them into, I'm like, okay.
Well, you know what I think? I think that if you're up in, some of the areas like in Carolina and stuff like that, I think they're going to do okay. Because I think a lot of people are going to come back out of Florida. What do you think about having to put a roof on every 10 to 15 years in Florida?
Honestly, I think it's going to be a nationwide thing. I have a friend of mine that had a big insurance brokerage. He just sold it last year, and I actually had him on the podcast. I think what we're going to see is that the roof issue is going to be It's going to be nationwide. But yeah, Florida, especially Texas, high hurricane or hail damage, tornadoes, whatever. Too many people were robbing the system. Too many roofing contractors were robbing the system. Hey, I can get this under your insurance policy. When people were selling houses, they're like, oh, don't worry about the roof inspection because you're going to get a new roof anyway. Your insurance company's going to pay for it. But what we're seeing and what I've been told is that at least here in the DMV, is that if you have a house that has a roof over 20 years, it will be uninsurable. So that is kind of like a new sort of rule. And we're seeing where people buy houses, they did an aerial, maybe they used a Google Earth. The Google Earth wasn't updated since 2021. They wrote the policy based on, not seeing streaks in the roof or looking like everything is okay. And then a couple months after they purchased the house, they send the adjuster out and they look at the house and then they get a letter in the mail that says, you need to replace your roof or we're canceling your insurance. Or you need to replace your railings on your deck, or you need to do all of these different things. So I think insurance companies are going to be finding ways nationwide to, because they're spending a lot of money. When you look at it, yeah, they make a lot of money, but the fraud and abuse on claims has gotten to the point and now look at the replacement costs. When you're looking at houses nationwide, they've gone up 40% on average in 5 years.
You're deporting all the people that do the roofs. Wait do you see the price of a roof when you don't have, when
there's
you
that.
have, yeah.
I mean, I think that I'm not seeing where my friends' kids are graduating college and saying, I want to be a roofer or I want to be a plumber or they don't want to do physical labor. And as well as I do, if you're an HVAC, you can make amazing money.
Oh yeah.
Any of the trades, the trades.
Well, but my thing is that, the Board of Fire Underwriters, Board of Fire Insurance Underwriters are the one that do the code books. And they, the underwriters testing laboratories are the one to do the shingles. So they're saying, okay, here's a 30-year shingle based on a 512 roof pitch. That's what they base it on to make a 30-year shingle. Okay. I mean, how do they sit there and come back and say that that you got to put it on in 15 years? That's what I don't understand.
It's ridiculous.
Because
even a 3-tab's going to give you 25 years. I mean, it's
exactly.
not, in a very, in normal conditions. I mean, it's just ridiculous. It's ridiculous.
And that's on a 512 roof pitch. Most of these roofs are 7, 8, 10, 12.
Right.
And you take them roofs, them things are good for, you take a 30-year shingle on one of those roofs, they're good for 50, 60 years.
And try and get somebody to own a non-walkable roof. See what the price is to replace your roof.
Well, the thing is, anything over a certain height by OSHA, you got to be tied off or you got to put guardrails around it over like 5 or 6 feet. I mean, nobody's adhering to that. If they ever hold to those rules doing residential housing, you'll see the price of the shingles go through the roof.
Everybody has those ladder lifts now. I mean, we don't even see people carrying shingles on their shoulders like they did back in the day. If the delivery company can't get there to put the shingles on the rooftop and you have to carry them up. Oh, yeah.
Well, you remember, were you a builder when you were younger?
No. I say no. I mean, I didn't go to college. So when I got out of high school, I went straight into construction and I took wood shop, my whole middle school and high school years. So I was always interested in building. It was always something that was, attractive for me. I like to work. I like to see things that I build, and it's very rewarding. So I started building. Well, I started as a contractor, subcontractor in 1989.
Okay, but I back in when I was a kid, when they went and put shingles out on the job site, okay, we had to get there and be there they'd set them, on the pallets on the ground. We had to carry them up on the roof. You had to put a sheet of plywood over them with a concrete block on it, because if they sat in the sun, they were all stuck together. They're
Yeah.
putting these things on the roofs now and leaving them there for weeks on end. I'm like, how are them
Right.
shingles not all stuck together?
They
They're
are.
not putting the oil into the shingles that they were years
And they're
ago.
thin. They're paper thin.
Yeah,
I
I
mean,
don't
shingles
know.
are a lot. You get a lot more. You get a lot more bundles to a square than you
Yeah.
did back in the day.
Well, they're not, and then I watch them, and these guys are, when they take the roofs off, they're going in with the little shovels, and they're peeling them off, and I'm like, we had to start from the top down and peel them like we were pushing snow or something,
Right.
because they all were stuck together. You couldn't come in and just pull a few up and put them down. I'm like,
Right.
they're not putting the tar in them. That's why they're blowing off. And it doesn't matter if they're a week old or 15 years old, they're coming off in a big storm.
Yeah.
So for them to make people go in and do this in 15 years, somebody don't know what they're doing, or Home Depot just bought one of the biggest roofing suppliers in South Florida.
Is that right?
Yep. Just before we left there a year and a half ago, they closed on, and they own, and it's not, the name isn't Home Depot, but like they had 27, and they were the wholesalers to all the roofing companies. So that's how big it was. And there's somebody making a lot of money of it because it's nonsense.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, a guy that put shingles on when I was 15 years old, I shouldn't have been on the roof, but I was.
And you weren't tied off. Well, look,
No,
my
wasn't
friend,
tied
it was very nice chatting with you,
Yeah.
man. I appreciate you calling in, and keep watching. And if we open it up, you want to come back on, we'd love to have you.
Okay, thank you very
All right,
much.
God bless, man. Okay.
God bless.
That's awesome. All right, we got anybody else? Comments. Let's take some comments. Yeah, I love chatting with people that that knows what's going on. I mean, it's guys. I mean, I tell you what, it really worries me, the quality of the construction and the quality of the products that even in the new construction, especially in the new construction nowadays, but even when you're going and you're buying faucets from Home Depot, and I mean, it's a lot of it's junk, and it's just not going to last. The countertops. I mean, I think one of the biggest things is I'm walking through houses that have either been rehabbed or, in recent years, or people spent money on updating and upgrading their kitchens and bathrooms. A big thing is going and looking at vanities. So they go into Home Depot or Lowe's, they buy this vanity. A lot of times it comes with the top and the bowls attached to it. And I mean, the finish on the vanities, I mean, they look like trash in 2 or 3 years. I mean, even taking care of them, cleaners, you have to be careful what you put on them. They stain, and you're redoing it again in 7 years. So, a bathroom's not lasting. You're not getting 20 years out of a renovation. And this is a lot of the products, the vinyl plank, the flooring that people are using, the tile. I mean, everything. It's so much junk out there, and it's very expensive. And it really, I never thought I would be that guy. I remember one time my uncle was, and he's still alive. He's in his 90s, but I used to I'd get into it, in prior years, I would kind of get into it with him, like, you're so mean, or you're so condescending, or you're whatever. And then one day I got wise and I realized, he's not mean. He's not condescending. He's tired of the crap. And it's like you get to a point where, when you start getting life experience, that you just get tired of being fed crap or cheated or disappointed. And then you go back and you're like, oh yeah, well, you're just one of those guys that say, yeah, but back in the day, well, I could tell you it was different. It's not just saying that. I look at what we have today. We don't make anything, very little. We import everything. There's very little satisfaction in job, job satisfaction. People go home frustrated. They go home feeling unfulfilled. We have more issues today, more homelessness. I mean, it's just everything. I mean, we have to look at it and say, what the heck is going on? And that's one of the things that one of the reasons why I like to podcast and kind of for those that care to listen is to say, look, you don't have to be in that playpen. You don't have to play in that arena. You can be different. You can make different choices. You can try and save money. Don't overextend yourself. Look for better and nicer things. And, stop pressuring yourself to keep up with the Joneses because, man, we're seeing this where we are today. This is just the tip of the iceberg, I think. All right. Hey, what's happening, Austin?
Hey, how's it going, Todd? Can you hear me okay?
Buddy? Yeah, where are you calling from?
Calling from New York.
All right, another New Yorker. The last guy moved from New York. You're still there. Where do you live in New York? What part?
I'm actually in Levittown.
Okay, awesome.
Yep.
Have you been watching my show for
Yes.
any
So
period of time?
Yes, probably since 2021.
Wow.
I actually spoke to you once live in 2022.
Thought you
Briefly.
looked familiar. Yeah. Did you see the video that I did on HOAs in Levittown?
Yeah. When did you do that one? I feel like I've seen all your
Probably
videos. But
2 months ago or something. It's a cool video, man. It's gotten very little play. I was actually very surprised why it just YouTube just didn't serve it up. It's a very interesting video. We go over the history of HOAs, and actually, other than one HOA in California, which wasn't as formalized as Levittown, was the Levitt and Company. They're building. There it is. When the one brother was a World War II vet, and him and his other brother and father started Levitt and Company, and they actually started building houses and were the first sort of notable HOA in the United States. And of course, back then there was a lot of discrimination. There was a lot of, there were other reasons.
Deed restrictions.
Yeah. What's that?
There were deed restrictions.
There were a lot of restrictions. Yeah, a lot of restrictions. And but anyway, so yeah, what you got, man?
Yeah, so I kind of wanted to harp on some of the things that you said right before the other gentleman first came on about being able to get your offer maybe accepted, or just some of the philosophy behind where we are trending in price. Just to give you a little background on what I do. I lease apartments for the last 5.5 years at luxury buildings in Brooklyn. And half of my job is renting the apartments, and the other half is helping management come up with a pricing strategy that in COVID helps keep them outside of the frame of the falling knife and keeps the building full. And then on the good times, for probably from 2022 up until about early last year, maximizing as much as we can. Of course, we're always looking to maximize how much we get for apartments in any market, but recently we've seen a lot of softness enter. And I'm really big on connecting the micro trends that you see when you walk through communities or when you're looking on Zillow and your local zip code, all the way up through the macro trends, because that's really how you get more of a sense of what the big levers are in the economy that determine what direction it's heading, whether it's in housing, finance, stocks, all these different things. But as it pertains to housing, let's take the example of Florida. Florida right now has, I think they're heading towards probably their record for listings going in next year. I think in 2009, they had, I think the gentleman Phil that you've had on a few times. I love your back and forth, by the way. You guys are very entertaining. You keep him on his toes. But what was I going to say? I think it was like around 300,000 listings they had at peak in like 2009, 2010. And right now there's record low transactions nationwide. So there's a lot of friction, obviously, as you know, buyers getting cold feet. But what I think is going to happen is you're going to have three main things that are going to contribute to the downside. And then I'm going to get into how that can help potential buyers looking for opportunities next year or even now in the near future. So the first thing is the HOA delinquencies and foreclosures that are inbound. The foreclosure workout program has ended as of October 1st. So now people are only eligible. I know you may have discussed this with, I think, the gentleman John, who you've had on before, and Melody Wright, but that game plan is over. And then you're going to have people who are distressed, who are lost their job. Obviously, the government shut down right now, so we don't know how that's going to play out. But places like Florida and Arizona, and Nevada, Las Vegas, unemployment's already close to 7%. And when you start to see that, you see distressed sellers enter the market. And in a place like Florida, you're seeing a lot of massive delistings. So think about the psychology of that. If you're a buyer looking to buy next year in the future, all those people that delisted, they're most likely going to have a different broker representation next time. And when they do sit down next time, that broker who had that experience with other clients last year is now going to have less patience and it's going to be honed in on fulfilling the transactions. Because I think you said it before, Todd, if I can get a listing, if I can get 12 listings, that's great. But if I don't feel like I can make the transaction happen, if I can't facilitate it, what are we doing, right? So I think for buyers in Florida, it's going to be big for you and other places as well, but specifically Florida. If you're looking at something, I would say wait until the very early spring of next year to see the trajectory of how inventory goes onto the market, because I think it's going to happen fast, a lot faster than some people think, because the carrying costs are too high. That was the third thing I forgot to mention. So I think if people take the time to be confident in what they're seeing in the market on a bigger trend and then apply it in the local on a subdivision level, you're going to have so much success submitting offers that are advantageous to you, and really going to help you, feel like you're getting either a deal or just getting the market value for that property. What do you think about that?
I think it's all good advice. The only thing I would add to that is if you are buying in a declining market, and look, it's obvious that that's what we're in now. I mean, if you go to Google and you search housing market news or whatever, is side by side, you will see conflicting data from one news source to the next. And understanding that most economists are working on the payroll of somebody in an industry that may or may not want it to go up or down. But what you really need to do is do your own research and be educated yourself and see what's happening in the market that you're interested in buying in. And you still can take advantage and pre-buy discounts today. You just don't know where that would be. So if you're looking at a house and you have to gauge to yourself, what do you think that market could do if we saw a 40% increase or a 22% increase in home prices in my market? If you're in Idaho or you're in Ohio or you're somewhere where you didn't see huge gains, you may not see huge declines, but you have to understand if you're going to buy, you can't be afraid to take a shot. Do like I was doing earlier in the show, show the history, look at the history, take a look at the history. When did they buy last? Do they have equity that they can afford to part with? How motivated are they to sell? And can you bridge the gap to where you think that price may be? Nobody has a crystal ball. Do I think that the whole nation is going to crash 50% prices? I don't. I don't think that will happen. But I do think we're starting to see 20, 25% price declines in certain areas like Florida, in certain neighborhoods, certain listings. But what is that starting point? So you have to be educated with understanding where the starting point was. How did that relate in appreciation? And put all of those cards together. Because if I can buy something today when I have less competition, if something checks my boxes and something is good for me, and I can afford it at a certain price, what is that price and can I get it now? And that would be the only thing that I would really add to that is you can, if the trend's going down and somewhere is the bottom and we're at a top to where that bottom is, still not from 22, but we've come down a lot. But if we're dealing with a set of a bottom and a top, where do you want to be in that downward slide? And I think that's and that's individual for everybody. That's why I think that, it's really important. And I'm not just saying as an infomercial, but in my course that I built and that I teach, it steps you through every bit of the thought process in buying a home, things that agents don't even think of. I think every agent should get my Todd Simple home buying course. Not just a plug, but I do believe it's helping people. I know it's helping people, but I do believe that people should take it, and it will walk them through the process of the thought process on how to identify a deal, how to identify what you can afford, how to identify the problems or issues that are potential with a property, the things that are from a years and decades of experience in buying houses, selling houses, and helping people buy and sell and building houses. So anyway, that's about as good of a plug as I can give my course there. Get my course if you're interested in buying a house. But but also, no, man, we love having you on. I think it's good advice. And let me just ask you before you go, because I think we have somebody on deck.
Sure.
And
I just
have about 20 minutes
after you ask the question.
Yeah, I just want to ask one question. When you're, what are you doing right now in the soft market? Are you giving 13, 14, and 15-month leases for 12 months? Are you giving basically 2 and 3 months for free for new tenants?
Great question. So I'm not sure if you're too familiar with it in here in New York, but they have rent stabilization that's pretty unique, unlike California, where it's a nationwide, not nationwide, a statewide program or governance. Here, it's a 421A program. So the buildings, there are a lot of buildings in downtown Brooklyn that are under this 421A. So they have a max legal rent that they can list. So the owners and developers, in exchange for that tax abatement, get to have to follow the state's guidelines for rent stabilization. And why am I bringing that up is because for us, our buildings are rent stabilized. So there's a max legal rent. What I'm seeing is we're starting to have to list them below that max legal rent on a very regular basis, sometimes hundreds of dollars below that, where in the past 2 years, we would, like clockwork, they would be max legal rent and they would be compelling. There's so much new inventory here. And a lot of these new units are entry-level luxury. They bring you in with the amenities, but it's just become more competitive. And yes, our competitors are doing that, though, to answer your question. They're offering 3 on 15, 2 on 18, all these different things. And, they're playing around, staying on the market. But the one last thing I wanted to add, was the shift in the philosophy when you go to buy, because you're going to have your pick as a buyer when there's so many other options on the market. You have to get rid of the mindset that you're lucky to just find a home. Even though we might all feel that way with all the frustration that we've had, you really want to take into consideration, hey, if I'm buying a home where there's record inventory, the odds are that if I have to sell it in the near future, loss of job, someone dies, whatever the reason is my home resellable? Can I get close to what I purchased it for tomorrow, next year, 5 years from now? Try and focus. If you're looking at a 3-bed, 2-bathroom home in general, right, very common layout, you want to try and focus. Is there extra space that you can add utility with not too much cost? An office, a den, a second floor landing, a porch, something that is, even if you don't add it, something when you go to buy it, differentiate
equity.
Else. Exactly. Or even if it doesn't build equity, it's a comparably, if you have to go and sell it 4 or 5 years, 2 years from now, it looks better than the other ones on the block.
100%, man. Good advice. I appreciate you.
Such a pleasure.
Thanks for calling in. All right. Talk to you soon.
Be well. Bye-bye.
Okay. Bye. Smart guy. That's great. One thing I find about our listeners is you guys are educated for sure. All right. One more. We got James on deck. Huh? Oh, that was the first guess. All right, good. So let's take a couple comments before we start off for the week. How do you balance making updates for your home with return on investment when there are low comps around you? Yeah, I mean, this is kind of what we've been talking about, Joel. There's a saying in real estate is your profit is in your buy. You have to buy it right. And I think one of the things that we're seeing with the last several years is a lot of people bought without home inspections. So making updates now is just driving them underwater. So the only thing that you can hope for is you're going to stay there long enough that you can see higher price appreciation in 8 or 10 years. It may take that to get your money. I mean, your lifestyle is the other balance. You know, if you're taking a shower in a bathroom that is leaky and dysfunctional and noisy because of the pipes or whatever, and, you know, waking your significant other up when you're taking a shower at 6 o'clock in the morning, you may just have to do it just to say we don't have a choice, but, you know, we don't want to take a shower in this bathroom anymore. So, but yeah, that's a good question. And I know we had a super chat in there too. Yep, there we go. Thank you so much. I'm in a van, can looking to possibly buy an old house and rehab it in upper lower suite so my aging mom would have a place to live with, cheap rent. Good idea, or should I pay more and buy already built? You know, I would say the question that I would ask yourself is, what are your capabilities of doing work yourself? You know, some people are handy and have no problem in checking out YouTube and learning how to do something and doing it themselves. I would say that if it were me, I'd rather buy a fixer-upper. I want to buy something that's in the worst condition, and I want the best price that I can get. But the other thing is, depending on whether you're getting a loan for it, if it's in too bad a shape, you may not be able to get financing. So, you know, the appraiser might flag it. The job of an appraiser is changing now every day. We just had an appraiser on, I think, was it last Friday, I believe. And it was a great show, but he was saying that appraisers now have to be inspectors, basically. And over the next 12 to 18 months, this is really going to be the inspection process of a financed home is going to be the responsibility of the added responsibility to a home appraiser. So you may not be able to get financing on something that's in that bad of shape, but I would certainly rather get something that I could fix up and put some sweat equity into and build some value, especially if you're going to be paying more than what you would like to pay. Can someone explain why sellers delist a home and then relist it the very next day for just $1,000 less? What's the strategy behind that? This is a great question, April. Basically, what happens is if a house hits the market and there's no activity on it, like a price reduction or changing the MLS, it doesn't recirculate through all of the public-facing sites. Or if you're on some agents, realtors, database, and they're kicking you listings, when something changes with that listing, like a price reduction or a new listing, it recirculates that and gets a whole nother set of eyeballs, or maybe gets people that saw it before seeing it again. Maybe they forgot, maybe they said, oh yeah, I should have saw that house or looked at that house. But yeah, it's kind of like a slap in the face, $1,000 price cut, especially on something. I mean, if it's a $60,000 house, $1,000 price cut may be meaningful. If it's a $600,000 house, a $1,000 price cut is kind of like a slap in the face. Keep an eye on houses in the 70s. Many have aluminum wiring. It's a pain to deal with for upgrades, etc. Couldn't agree more. Could be dangerous. Could be a fire hazard. Can lay people go to home auctions, or do you need a license? Nope. You can do it without a real estate agent. You just pay attention to what the auctioneer requirements are. You might have to register. You'll probably have to bring a cashier's check. Or if it's an online auction, you'll have to provide a credit card or something where they'll ping your credit card. And then if you're a successful bidder, you'll have a period of time to get them the deposit that they're requiring. 2 caveats: be careful of, if you're doing online auctions, the machine will bid against you until the reserves are met on just about every platform that I know of. And they tell you that in the terms. So you hit it, almost instantly you're outbid. That's the machine bidding against you until it hits reserves. The other thing is to understand that a lot of times if it's a foreclosure auction, you're dealing with a mad seller or somebody that lost their, not seller, but somebody that lost the house, and you have to be the responsible party to evict them. So a lot of times you can't see the house. And a third thing to consider would be a lot of them require you to pay a 5 or 6% buyer premium, and that's tacked on top of the hammer price. So just keep that in mind. But yes, you can. You do not need a real estate agent to buy a house at an auction, live or online. Even the homes I could now afford, I am scared about property tax and also insurance costs. You know, we talked about this in the show. Yeah, it's real. And a lot of people that purchased houses over the last 3 or 4 years were surprised that their payment that they thought would be locked in changed in just a couple of years. And now they're borderline to whether they can afford their mortgage payment or not. And I think that is the case with a lot of the sellers that we were looking at earlier, where they purchased their house in 2021, 22, or even 23. And we looked at one that had just bought their house in 2024. All right, one more. All right, people are going to have to give me 25% discount in order for me to buy over rent. You may get your wishes. All right, guys. Well, thanks so much. If you've never watched our show before, or if you've been watching and you haven't subscribed, please consider doing so now. And thanks for spending your Tuesday afternoon with me. And if you're watching this post live, put your comments in. I'll try and answer as many as I can. We'll see you next time.